Welcome to Hannity. Tonight, a Hannity investigation into America's two-tier justice system and corrupt D.C. politicians who excuse riots that don't advance their political agenda. Now, this includes the clear danger this country is now facing if Roe v. Wade is overturned. We have left-wing groups now signaling direct threats to riot. We'll tell you about that. But first, tonight, we begin with a major scam now ongoing inside the climate alarmist religious cult known as the New Green Deal Democratic Party, the Socialist Party. And as we speak, the Biden administration, they are knowingly and openly lying to you, the American people, including their own diehard supporters, about one of the Democratic Party's favorite causes, the transition to green, renewable energy. Remember, they steadfastly refuse to drill and to frack, and they want to import oil from Iran and Venezuela and Saudi Arabia and OPEC. Watch.
We have a chance here to make a fundamental turn toward renewable energy, electric vehicles, and not just electric vehicles, but across the board.
Ultimately, we really do need to be investing in renewables.
Until we achieve a form of energy independence that is based on clean energy created here at home, American citizens will still be vulnerable to wild price hikes like we're seeing right now during Putin's war.
As Minister Ryan has said, this clean energy transition could be the peace project of our time.
The way in which we can assure reasonable energy expenses for households is to move to renewables to address climate change.
Now, tonight we'll do a deep dive. We'll expose the truth about these lies because, as it turns out, this push towards what they call renewables and green energy and electric cars is a massive fraud. We'll explain in detail, but in order to really understand this, it is important to first know, where do we get our energy from? You ever ask yourself the question? I know you come home, you flip on the lights. Electricity. That's great. Look at your screen. 79% of America's grid is now powered by, guess what? Fossil fuels. What do I say about fossil fuels? The lifeblood of the world's economy. That includes petroleum, natural gas, and you bet coal. Another 8% is derived from nuclear power plants. Liberals hate that, too. Now, currently, only 12% of our energy, by definition, would be from renewables. So if the administration truly wanted a transition away from fossil fuels, they would need to shut down 80 to 90% of our power grid and replace it with what? Windmills, solar power. Unfortunately, that type of so-called green energy is not very efficient. Let's take, for example, one wind turbine. It produces less than 3 megawatts of energy, whereas one natural gas turbine produces 45. And get this, a typical natural gas plant has 3 turbines, which means you could need, 49 windmills to replace just one moderately sized natural gas plant. Now, keep in mind, there are more than 3,400 fossil fuel power plants in operation within the U.S. Any transition to wind and to solar would take decades and decades and decades, and it would not lower the cost at all in the interim and probably thereafter. Now, each windmill costs more than $3.8 million to build, not to mention the thousands upon thousands of acres of land that would be needed to be purchased. And as Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm declared, will require a lot of new resources that we, the American people, will have to pay for. Take a look.
With the president's goal of 100% clean electricity by 2035 and net zero by 2050, we are going to be able to do that kind of transition with all different kinds of technologies in all pockets of the country. We're going to need workers to, yes, install wind turbines and solar panels. We're going to need workers to build those wind turbines and solar panels. We need steel workers. We need miners for the materials to build them. We're going to need truckers and dock workers and deckhands to transport them. We're going to need electricians. We're going to need laborers. We're going to need utility workers.
In other words, a big transition to renewables is not going to happen under Biden, and any incremental transition will do nothing but drive up the cost of energy all across the board. The only actual way to bring down prices is to produce more gas and oil, the lifeblood of the world's economy. I'll say it again. In order to appease the climate alarmist cult in his party and pull the wool over your eyes, the administration is now trying to outsource all energy needs overseas. That's why they're trying to do a deal with Iran. That's why they're sending an emissaries over to Venezuela. That's why he will bow before the crown prince, the guy that he says is responsible for killing Jamal Khashoggi, the pariah nation of Saudi Arabia, in order to make another big show about shutting down oil and gas infrastructure, like, for example, pipelines and refineries and exploration permits inside the U.S. Now, that's why Biden is going to Saudi Arabia. In spite of what they say, I promise you, he will be begging that crown prince right there and kissing up to him and kissing his ass and begging for more oil production. Now, we saw the same thing in in Europe with Russia, far-left Germany. Well, guess what? They have their own climate alarmist religious cult. They were desperate to appease them. They shut down their fossil fuel facilities. They outsourced all of their energy needs and did billion-dollar deals with Vladimir Putin. How's that working out? Ultimately, it was all about optics, didn't actually improve the environment. I mean, Mother Earth, does it matter if you get a barrel of oil from here or over here? Not really. It always was a huge scam. And now with Putin's war raging, Germany, well, the spigot's been shut off. Now they have to restart their, well, mothball coal-powered plants. Whoopsie daisy. Now this brings us to electric cars. Now pay close attention here. When the Biden administration isn't fantasizing about renewables and energy independence with renewables, they're begging Americans. They're lecturing us to buy electric cars. They tell us over and over again, buy an electric car. Take a look.
Last month, we announced a $5 billion investment to build out a nationwide electric vehicle charging network so that people from rural to suburban to urban communities can all benefit from the gas savings of driving an EV.
Under my plan, which is before the Congress now, we can take advantage of the next generation of electric vehicles that a typical driver will save about $80 a month from not having to pay gas at the pump.
On the issue of gas prices, after waiting for a long time to have enough chips in this country to finally get my electric vehicle, I got it and drove it from Michigan to here this last weekend and went by every single gas station, and didn't matter how high it was.
If you filled up your EV by charging and you filled up your gas tank with gasoline and you have the same size tank, you would save $60 per fill up by going electric rather than using gasoline.
Maybe they haven't noticed, but Biden inflation has added an additional $6,000 to every American household unnecessarily. And as you can see, Democrats want you to believe you buy an electric vehicle, it will bring down the cost for you, the American people, and will save the environment at the same time. Both claims are totally false. Let's tackle the cost, the obvious. The average price for a new electric vehicle is $64,000 compared to $44,000 for a full-size car. So from the purchase, you're already, well, 20 grand in the hole. Add in another $1,200 for an installation of an electric charging port and $55 a month in additional energy costs, and you will most certainly not be saving any money over the entire life of the vehicle. I'm not against them, but I'm just giving you the reality. Now, of course, any electric car is only as clean as its energy source. They never talk about this part. Remember, 80% of our power comes from oil, gas, and coal. But that's not the only thing to consider. Keep in mind the production of these electric vehicles, not exactly environmentally friendly. You know, the battery alone is typically comprised of nickel, cobalt, aluminum, manganese, and all of these need to be mined from Mother Earth with heavy equipment that uses gas or diesel. Many rechargeable batteries are derived from, China, where they use slave labor or child labor. And don't get me wrong, there are some pretty cool electric vehicles on the market, including Tesla. By the way, I'd look at a Tesla. A friend of mine swears by his. He loves it. But buying one doesn't make you Captain Planet, as John Kerry, who flies around in his private jets, would have you believe. And by the way, under Trump, the United States, you may have never been told this by the climate alarmist cult. Under Donald Trump, the United States led the world in greenhouse gas reduction. not because of electric cars or windmills. Instead, clean-burning, affordable natural gas developed through the free market helped the United States curb pollution. By the way, we're the Middle East of natural gas. We have at least 200-plus years worth of a supply of natural gas, and that's all we know about at this moment. Now, talking about a phantom transition to renewables is not going to save our economy or the planet. We are now barreling towards a recession, coupled with out-of-control inflation. The national gas tax holiday Biden is now proposing will not significantly bring down prices. I'll take it. 18.4 cents a gallon, but I'll take it. But even Obama said that this is a gimmick, kind of like tapping into the strategic petroleum reserve. It's a Band-Aid. It's a temporary fix. After the election, they'll put it back in place. Take a look.
Oil companies like Shell and BP just reported record profits for the quarter, and we're arguing over a gimmick to save you half a tank of gas over the course of the entire summer so that everyone in Washington can pat themselves on the back and say that they did something.
I can't believe it. Obama, for once, is actually right. Meanwhile, Obama's former economic advisor, Larry Summers, is now not only predicting a recession, also warning that the U.S. would need 5 years or 6% unemployment or 1 year of 10% unemployment to ease inflation, Biden inflation. Our economy is going into a very dark place. You see it with your 401k. You see it when you go to the gas pump, and you see it in every store that you shop in. And by the way, the White House press secretary wasn't exactly reassuring. Take a look.
The action that the president has taken with the American Rescue Plan, with what we have seen with the historical gains, that is going to help us deal with a recession. Right now, we don't see a recession. Right now, we're not in a recession right now. Right now, we're in a transition where we are going to go into a place of stable and steady growth. I mean, the president has been very clear in making sure that he does everything that he can to alleviate the pain that American families are feeling when it comes to gas prices.
America's not heading towards a recession. That's kind of like inflation is transitory. We, the American people, are not stupid. Now, the Americans now know that how supply and demand works. They know that lecturing oil and gas companies and restricting the domestic production of energy, raising taxes is not going to bring down costs or save us from a recession. And by the way, now in a new poll, Biden's approval rating is at 32%. That's right, the lowest point in a presidency since 1948. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.